from 6 News. This is the 6 News Capitol Rundown.
The interview that we did, I basically said to her, whether you like this or not, after you give that speech, this speculation thing is going to continue.
Will she or won't she? Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic looks at the national chatter surrounding Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Michigan's critical heading into 2020.
Republicans claim they've got a jump on Democrats here in Michigan in 2020.
I'm doing really well, and we have a ton of momentum.
And not throwing in the towel. Despite gaining little support in Iowa, why presidential candidate Tom Steyer says he's still in the game. It's all straight ahead. The 6 News Capitol Rundown starts now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Thompson. We start here in Michigan. You often see our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic following lawmakers, especially Governor Gretchen Whitmer, around the Capitol, getting you the latest information on state government. Jorma Duran sat down with Tim here in our studio, and they're both here for you now with a behind-the-scenes look at what's happening this week.
Tim Skubic, thank you so much for joining us. Huge week politically, not only here nationally, but here in the state of Michigan. Let's start here at home. Governor Gretchen Whitmer chosen to be the rebuttal for President Trump's State of the Union. How big of a deal is that?
What a great way to start out a new program. We actually have something to talk about. Okay, I mean, what a get for her.
Yeah.
When I talked to her, she got the call from Nancy Pelosi. And basically, the folks in Washington, you know, when this all started, when she was on the stage at the Democratic debate in Detroit, she stood up there and did her walk back and forth thing, which she does so well, and people said, who the heck was that?
Yeah.
Okay, and so she got some name recognition, and everybody said, this is pretty good stuff. So Miss Pelosi calls her and says, you know, we want you to do the rebuttal, and the governor said it was mind-boggling, but I said yes, because you don't say no to the speaker. So now she's got this assignment of what does she say? The rebuttal was not a rebuttal. In fact, if you listen to the speech, at the beginning, she basically said, he gave a speech, I'm going to ignore it, and I'm going to tell you what I want to talk about, okay? Which is, you know, you can't really respond to it because it was an unfair fight. The president had an hour and 18 minutes to lay out an agenda, which was very aggressive, in his mind, very positive. The governor got 10 minutes, so basically she focused on what she called her Democratic agenda. And she did well, okay? She didn't drink water in the middle of it like former Senator Rubio. In fact, I joked with her about that. I said, what are you going to do about this? She said, I'm going to hydrate, but not too much. So anyway, she was very pleased with the performance. Does it move the needle on anything? Probably not, but it's clearly is something that looks good on your resume.
Let's talk about that more. Her resume, what does that mean? They obviously think a lot about her.
They do, and the speculation story, which I'm sure you're going to ask me, go ahead, ask me about.
Vice President?
There you go, man. All right, so Vice President. This story with her actually starts last September, which is the first time that I asked her. I said, are you interested in Vice President? She said no. All right, so the story's over. But now this comes along. And in the interview that we did, I basically said to her, whether you like this or not, after you give that speech, this speculation thing is going to continue. So we did 2 sound bites with her. One last week in which I said, do you want to be Vice President? And the answer was very clear. You said last September, I do not want to be Vice President. That still holds.
Correct.
That has not changed.
Not at all.
And it won't.
Correct.
All right, so now she said, I don't want to be Vice President. What would you interpret from that?
She's avoiding really trying to really give her deep feelings about what she really wants to be. Maybe being politically correct.
Well, words make a difference in politics. There's a difference between want to be Vice President. And so now this week, this earlier week, having thought about this, I said, you know, there's another question that she needs to be asked, which is, if you got the phone call, what would you do? Now listen to this answer, because she doesn't say yes and she doesn't say no.
First, we're going to take a short break. After it, you'll hear how the governor answered that question and why Tim said this.
The Republican Party chair, Laura Cox, gets paid to be bad. Okay, she's the bad cop, and she had nothing nice to say about the governor at all.
Don't go anywhere. The 6 News Capitol Rundown. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 6 News Capitol Rundown. Before the break, we left our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic and 6 News This Morning anchor Jorma Duran in a conversation about Governor Whitmer and rumors that she could get tapped to be a candidate for vice president. Let's get back to that now.
All right, so now she said, I don't want to be vice president. What would you interpret from that?
She's avoiding really trying to really give her deep feelings about what she really wants to be. Maybe being politically correct.
Well, words make a difference in politics. There's a difference between want to be vice president. And so now this week, this earlier week, having thought about this, I said, you know, there's another question that she needs to be asked, which is, if you got the phone call, what would you do? Now listen to this answer, because she doesn't say yes and she doesn't say no. So if that call came, the answer would be no.
Tim, I'm going to take anyone's call if it comes, but here's the thing. I am not interested in going to Washington, D.C. I never have been.
So you would interpret that the door is open?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And why would you say no to something like that?
But you know what? In her heart of hearts, at this read, okay, and the dynamics, as you know so well, change in politics down the road. She loves Michigan. Her kids, her 2 daughters are here. Her dad is here. And it would be tough to say no, but you know, she had a chance to, and she didn't, because she said, I'll take the call, but I'm still not interested. We'll see.
I'm curious as to maybe what the Michigan Republican Party thought about her being chosen.
Well, this was interesting. The Republican Party chair, Laura Cox, gets paid to be bad. Okay, she's the bad cop, and she had nothing nice to say about the governor at all. She could have taken the high road and said something like, Governor, congratulations on getting this plum assignment, but you're not going to beat my guy, Donald Trump. Okay, that would have been a high road thing. Instead, she said this governor is just a photo op and a soundbite governor, and she broke all of her promises and blah, 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 blah. So Laura Cox had a chance to take the high road. She didn't. Mike Shirkey, on the other hand, the Senate Republican leader, did take the high road.
Wow. What a week.
Yeah.
Just the first week, and we're just getting started here.
We're coming up for air.
Tim, thank you so much for
Thanks,
joining
man.
us.
It's good to see you.
And that wasn't all they covered. We have the full conversation posted for you on WLNS.com. Well, moving further down the rundown now, while Republicans and Democrats don't seem to agree on much, one thing they do agree on is that Michigan is crucial in the 2020 election year. We have those details for you next. Well, the 2020 election season is officially underway, with every seat in the U.S. House and a number of seats in the U.S. Senate, and of course the White House, all up for grabs come November 3rd. And when it comes to major elections like this, you can generally predict how some states will vote when it comes to turning red or blue. But in key battleground states like Michigan, anything could happen, and voters here could very well decide this election. Well, we recently caught up with the current chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel. She's also the former chair of the Michigan Republican Party. She says the Mitten State is critical. Take a listen.
The RNC already has staff on the ground along with the Trump campaign. We're not taking Michigan for granted. Although this time President Trump gets to talk to Michiganders about the fact that we have renegotiated NAFTA and signed USMCA, and we have added 7.4 million new jobs. And he could talk about the promises that he's kept as president versus just being a candidate with empty rhetoric. But he loves this state. That's why he came here over and over again in 2016. Democrats are just catching up to that, but we're going to be very competitive here in 2020.
And on the other side of the aisle, Michigan Senator, Democrat Gary Peters, who's fighting to keep his seat in the Senate this year, agrees. He says both parties need to keep our state high on the radar.
Certainly Michigan is the key battleground state. I think everybody sees that Michigan may very well determine who the next president of the United States is, and that's going to be hotly contested by both whoever the Democratic nominee is and the president.
Well, Michigan will see firsthand exactly what Democrats think about the state's importance next month as they campaign ahead of the presidential primary here on March 10th. Well, still ahead here on the 6 News Capital Rundown, the Iowa caucus is over. And while he didn't finish near the top, hear why businessman and presidential candidate Tom Steyer says he's still confident in his mission. Our one-on-one interview with him is next. Welcome back. Here on the Rundown, part of the goal is to speak with candidates who want your vote and ask them questions about important issues that affect us here in Michigan. Jorma Duran recently sat down with Democratic presidential candidate Tom Steyer. He's here for you now with his response to some of those questions.
The race continues for Democratic candidates running to be the next president of the United States. And right now, we're joined by Democratic presidential candidate Tom Steyer. Tom, thanks so much for being here. Let's talk about Michigan. It went to President Trump in 2016. So what can you offer Michiganders to switch our state back to blue?
Look, I think everybody in the United States knows that we have a broken government that's been bought by corporations. I've spent 10 years putting together coalitions of Americans to take on and beat those corporations, and that's what I want to bring to Washington. If we can take back government of, by, and for the people, we'll get affordable health care, quality public education, starting with universal preschool. We'll get a living wage for Americans. We'll get the right to clean air and clean water for every American. But right now, Jorma, whoever's going to take on Mr. Trump has got to beat him on the economy. That's what he's running on. You can listen to him every single day.
Let's play a quick rapid fire and quick and answer quick Q&A. Let's start with a few topics that are major, starting with health care. Do you support Medicare for all or something else?
What I support is a public option as part of the Affordable Care Act. I believe the goal of affordable health care is a right for every American in the 21st century, and we need to dramatically drive down the costs.
Let's talk about student debt. Do you support what Senator Warren is proposing, that is erasing it all?
I have a different plan to make college affordable for everyone. There are 44 million people with college debt, with student debt. It's very significant, and all they're trying to do is be better citizens and better people. I believe in 2 years of free college. I believe a 1% interest rate, so you just pay back your student debt one time. Those interest rates don't chew you up the way they are now. And I believe that if you have a job that serves the country or serves your community, like being in the military or a teacher or a social worker or a nurse, that after 10 years, your student debt gets erased.
Tom, right now you're polling low. I'm assuming you're going to obviously stick to till Super Tuesday. What do you need to see for you to continue to stay in this race?
Actually, the funny thing is, Jorma, I am focused on the 4 early primary states of Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. In those 4 states, which are the first 4 caucuses or primaries, I'm at an average of 15% and in 3rd place, and I've gone up every week. So in fact, in the places where I've been working and where people know what I'm saying, I'm doing really well, and we have a ton of momentum. I think people understand that I'm the person who can take on Trump on the economy, and I've been saying the time to talk about wine caves and old videos and private conversations is over. Now it's time to beat Mr. Trump, and people understand that I can do that.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom Steyer, 2020 Democratic presidential candidate.
All right, thank you, Jorma. And that was just part of our interview with Steyer. If you would like to see more, the full thing is up on our website, WLNS.com. Coming up on the Rundown, we're heading to the nation's capital for a look at what's happening on Capitol Hill. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Over the last week, we've seen several things happen in Washington, D.C. The president was acquitted by the Senate on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. He also delivered his State of the Union address, where the president praised his administration for the economy and job growth and promised to protect the Second Amendment. Then we watched as Nancy Pelosi ripped up the president's speech on national TV. But that wasn't all that was happening in Washington. Our D.C. correspondent Raquel Martin spoke with Kira Lake about some other legislative actions this week, and they're here for you now with a closer look.
Raquel, while the Senate finished up its impeachment trial against the president, the House took up several legislative issues this week. You sat in on a hearing where execs of the 5 biggest vaping manufacturers testified. What did they have to say?
Well, these executives definitely took a more humble tone at the hearing. They said that they took responsibility for how their products may have spurred the teen vaping epidemic we're now dealing with today. Juul CEO even went so far as saying that their advertisements may have targeted teens by using influencers that were using their products. Now, this was the first time we actually heard from these executives since the White House went ahead and initiated a new ban on some flavored vaping products. And they definitely wanted to get across that they were being more proactive in making sure that their products don't end up in the hands of teens.
And what steps could lawmakers take next when it comes to regulating the industry?
Well, many Democrats in particular say that the White House ban doesn't go far enough. Now, that ban targets only closed pod vaping products that have flavors. So only those flavors are banned from the market. Democrats want to pass a legislation that would ban all flavored products from the market. They're also looking at other regulations that would also tax the vaping manufacturing business so that they can help pay for some of the new oversight over at the FDA.
And you also sat in on a special hearing for the Democratic Women's Caucus, and they're focusing on workplace sexual harassment. What's that all about?
Well, it was the first hearing that the caucus held of the year, and they said they didn't want the Me Too movement to get lost in other conversations happening right now. So they're looking at new federal regulations to try and expand protections for workers who may be victims of sexual harassment. And it was an emotional hearing. We had some people sharing their stories, some high profile, some from just everyday workers. We heard from a McDonald's worker in particular who says that the multi-billion-dollar company didn't do enough to help her advocate for herself at work, and she felt as if she was powerless. Now, lawmakers, again, are looking at federal regulations to help people in small businesses or contract workers to be able to sue their bosses if they are victims of harassment. But they do realize that it could be an uphill battle when taking that fight to the Republican-controlled Senate.
All right, thank you, Raquel. And that's a look at what's happening in the West Wing this week. Lauren, back to you.
All right, thank you, Kira. It's certainly a busy time in politics right now. Well, that's our show for this week. For extended coverage of some of our segments that we're not seeing here on air, head to WLNS.com/Capitol Rundown. You'll find our extended coverage there. Thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again next week. See you then.